QuakeCon 2021 was very kind to Nintendo Switch fans. We got the Quake Remaster full with motion aiming and cross-play deathmatch. And we finally got the second DLC expansion for Doom Eternal. I was actually a bit worried when starting this, remembering how Ancient Gods 1 went, but I was happy with what I found. Here is my review of Doom Eternal's The Ancient Gods Part 2 expansion for the Nintendo Switch. When it comes to story, I won't say anything to spoil Ancient Gods 1, but to summarize, following the events of that first expansion, the Doomslayer goes on a journey to find his way to the center of Hell and confront the demons one last time. The overall plot of this expansion adds a good bit to the lore, especially the origins of the Hell dimension that has been plaguing Earth since the original game on PC. It also showcases an incredible set piece in its final two levels that really ramps up how important these events are. I kind of feel bad that I can't show it to you because once I went into it, I got really hyped and excited. To start things off with content, this is an expansion campaign. It can be accessed on the main menu alongside the main story and Ancient Gods 1. We have 4 new missions to play through as it wraps up the story of Doom Eternal and Doom in general. Though it is technically 3 full-length levels as the 4th is just for the final boss. When it comes to gameplay and combat, Ancient Gods 2 added quite a few things to the mix. While the first expansion did add 1 or 2 things like the Bloodmakers and Spirits, 2 added the Armored Baron that has regenerating armor and a design I personally think looks great, Screecher zombies that buff nearby enemies upon death, Stone Imps that hurl themselves at you like suicide bombers, and a few others. The tools have expanded as well, with the meat hook on the Super Shotgun now being used as a grappling hook to swing around platforming areas. Then we get the big enhancement, the Sentinel Hammer. You gain this during the first mission, and it is an area of effect weapon that charges from glory and weak spot kills you do to enemies. When used, it produces a shockwave around you doing a ton of damage, spawning ammo and temporarily stunning anything it doesn't kill. It even works on mid-bosses like the Tyrant, giving you a nice little window of time to get your chain gun out and fill that sucker with white-hot lead. The hammer itself is a huge addition that balances the combat, especially regarding the difficulty. It'll get you to emphasize more on weak point and glory kills, but takes care of huge mobs that surround you to help you get out of overwhelming situations, and you're definitely gonna need it. As the DLC page will suggest, it has even more demons than before. You'll have huge mobs thrown at you, sometimes with half a dozen or more pinkies and imps, and it looks quite intimidating. They even outdid Ancient Gods 1's 2 Marauder fight by putting in a pair of them with endlessly spawning Screechers there to buff them. The differences are the tools you have and better balanced enemy rooms. We don't have the excessively long enemy wave rooms that I mentioned in my Ancient Gods 1 review, and despite the overwhelming numbers, the hammer helps you keep everything manageable and under control. But not everything about it is great. It's not really a huge deal, but like Ancient Gods 1, this expansion doesn't add any new collectible cheat codes, figures, or music. There are some cracked wall rooms in the levels, but they just contain ammo and extra lives. Instead of hiding secrets, they made special gore nest enemy waves that you can go through. Each level has one, where the first one is required and upgrades the hammer, whereas the second one is optional that you can toggle to unlock special cosmetics. Also, the final boss is something of a tedious thing. I thought the set piece and overall fight difficulty was great. It felt like a good final boss, but the way you go about it through the various phases is tedious and very repetitive. Despite the tedium of that one part, it isn't that long of an expansion overall. With a few retries here and there, I managed to get from start to finish in about 4 to 4.5 hours. Now that we're done talking about the DLC itself, let's talk about patch 1.8. With the new update, they made some very slight changes to the visuals just as the one for Ancient Gods 1 did. The resolution comes and goes in some areas like before, but overall we have just a bit more detail and less blurriness on the visuals. Though we should stress the word slight there. The only reason I noticed was after I compared a screenshot I took of 1.8 to one I took months ago of 1.5. The performance has also improved. Part 2 has much larger demon hordes yet stayed at a stable frame rate pretty much the entire time. There was only one section towards the end of level 3 that I saw it drop under 30 frames per second. That room had a bunch of the larger enemies at the same time, like the Armored Baron, Cyber Mancubus, and Tyrant. I was hopeful that this meant Ancient God 1's lag was fixed, so I went back to one of those levels, and unfortunately that lag is still there. As we bring all of this together, the finale of Doom Eternal's expansion is an intense and fun shooting adventure that adds a lot to the lore, brought in a lot more new features than its predecessor, and feels much more balanced despite the overwhelming mobs you will be pitted against. Now on the downside, the final boss itself is very tedious and there are still small FPS drops in one area, but any fan of Doom Eternal will have a blast with this DLC finale. Reviews to go rates Doom Eternal's The Ancient Gods Part 2 for the Nintendo Switch an 8 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching and have a great day.